Welcome to Space News Live. I do a live show every week, either Saturday evening or Sunday morning, depending where you're listening from. And I recap the videos I've done recently. I've done 3 this week. So I'll just be going over those. I'll be showing some of the comments left for the videos. I'll be answering any questions, chat messages. In addition, I'll go over any space news that I've not covered this week for whatever reason. Maybe I just decided not to add it, or for whatever reason it didn't make it into space news. And then I'll go over upcoming content, some ideas for videos for next week and further on. So that's the plan for the show. So if you're new, thanks for tuning in. And okay, let's get started with the show. So at the beginning of the week, I did put myself in the corner. I did a tier list. I don't do these that often. This is only the second tier list I've done. And it's a tier list on lunar ice harvesting, mining, extraction, processing, and so on. So the idea is you get an overview of all the companies involved in lunar ice mining ecosystem. So it's not just the companies primarily doing that as their business. There's some of those. There's some who do it as a secondary resource. In other words, that they're processing lunar regolith, but they're not primarily concerned with water. They could be concerned with helium-3, or in this case, maybe lunar landing pads. So they're processing the regolith, and as a side effect of that, they get lunar oxygen or whatever. So because it's valuable, they'll store it and they'll sell it. So you can see the tiers here. It's the lunar ice extraction and processing, then other lunar resources. Then I talk about mobility. That's basically lunar rovers. There's 4 of those, 3 from the Americans and 1 from the Japanese. So mobility is obviously a key criteria, key issue for moving stuff around on the moon, and moving mining equipment and crew and so on. And then you've got communications, you've got power, you've got space tugs, you've got orbiting propellant depots, and also the end users, which would be the HLS landers, the SpaceX Starship and the Blue Origin lander. Blue Lander, I think it's called. And then potentially you've even got the landers that are just landing equipment and so on. They could be refueled. And then you've got the space agencies, government departments, who would be there as a mostly funding, but they could also be end users as well. So basically, I collected all of those different entities, startups, corporations, big corporations, aerospace, whatever, defense, agencies, governments, and privates, like tourists even. So I put them all together, and this was kind of more like a grouping video, and it was about talking about the ecosystem of lunar ice harvesting, mining, and it wasn't so much ranking, which you can certainly do with tier lists, but I wasn't really focusing on the ranking side, but just a grouping of all the different companies. So you get an overview of which companies are involved. So that was the idea on the video, and there's quite a few comments. So I'll just bring up the comments, see what people are saying. I'll just get rid of myself here just for a moment. So Neon Empire 1684 said, well, not really a tier list. I'm more like categorizing them by their business niche. Yeah, so I wasn't really ranking in this video. So I said, like, I'm using tiers as categories, organizing the different roles into logical segments: mining, infrastructure, transportation, making it easier to understand the relationships between the entities without ranking them. So that was the plan for the video. And Dirk Isinger 4355 said, After watching to the end, I stick to my initial impression. This is very nice. We get an overview of who is involved in this area. I liked it. I think it also worked for other areas like manufacturing in space or humans in space. Yeah. I mean, I think there's potentially lots of different tier list videos you can do. Some of which could be, I'll bring myself back now. Some of which could be ranking videos. You can definitely do ranking. Some of them are more like the overview of a sector or a niche. It could be like in space. It could be humans in space. Yeah, it could be space tugs. It could be all kinds of things. So I've got a few ideas, but I don't do them every week because there's quite a lot of prep involved. For that video, it's like 3 days prep and like 30 minutes doing it. So it's but when I have time, I'll probably do more tier lists in the future. So that was the first video this week, and so then on to the second video this week, which is, we can bring it up. There it is. Astroport, building lunar landing pads. So it's not just building a lunar landing pad, it's also lift-off pads, right? It's for landing and lifting off on the moon. And the problem with that is you get a lot of dust or lunar regolith. And due to the very low gravity, the dust goes everywhere. It can even go into orbit. And it's very sharp and abrasive. And you don't want any like infrastructure nearby or equipment because it's going to get pelted with debris, rocks, pebbles, dust. So what you really want is you want landing pads. And there's an example here. Bring it up here. So something like that. So it's built with robots, and the plan is, this is Astroport. The plan is they will use robots to collect the regolith, to process it, basically heat it up, and through a nozzle you can create bricks. I'm going to put myself in the corner if I can. You can create bricks that are quite strong, stronger than concrete, and then you lay them down in a nice pattern, and you've got like a circular landing pad, which you can see here. And they've got landing lights, and they've got these berms, protective berms that go around the landing pad, and that kind of contains the plume or the rocks and debris and pebbles, and just makes it safer landing, safer for taking off, safer for the rocket, and also for anything nearby equipment, habitation, rovers, or whatever. So, and you can see another image here where they've got like a Starship landing on the landing pad. So I go over the plan from Astroport, which is quite convoluted. There's a lot of vehicles involved. You can see some of them here. They have the excavators. First of all, you've got the surveyors that are looking for the correct place, the place where there's regolith with some water ice content. Then you've got the excavators. You've got the what they call the Lunatron brick making machine, which basically is like a hopper. You put the regolith in at the top, and then you got the sieving. The regolith is sieved, and then it's heated with an induction heating, and then there's a nozzle at the bottom that ejects out molten rock, which then solidifies into bricks. And then you take each brick, and this is all done by autonomous robots. You take each brick and you put it in the right place on the landing pad, and you get this very large circular landing pad, and you've got an area around it that's been leveled, and then you have this protective berm that's been built up. And also there's like the power you need, the communications, cable laying for the different equipment, and there's like a shelter storage area. As you're building the lunar pad, you've got landers, you've got like starships taking off and landing. So they have this shelter area for the robots as the starships landing and taking off while they're building the lunar pad. So it's quite involved. There's a video explaining in detail how how all the robots work together. And so that's the second video I did this week on Astroport, which I didn't really know anything about that company until I did the research for the tier list. And I thought, okay, I should cover Astroport as well. I also mentioned in the video they do have a competitor. There's a competitor called Ethos Space Resources, which I have done a video on in the past. This is quite a few months ago. And they're also building lunar landing pads. They're also collecting liquid oxygen or oxygen, and they store it as liquid oxygen so they can sell that. I've not seen Astroport anywhere on the website saying they're going to do the same thing. They seem 100% focused on landing pads, which is fine. Autonomous robots, and they're working with a few companies. I mentioned 4Point, a Polish space startup that has some experience with electrifying mining equipment and automating, having autonomous mining vehicles, excavators, and so on, surveyors. So Astroport are working with them, and they got some funding from Europe on that. And also they're working with OrbitFab, which are more known for, bring myself up here now. They're more known for orbital refilling. So they have some. They're able to like refill satellites using their own refilling valves and so on. And they're working with U.S. Department of Defense, Space Force, and also Astroscale on refueling some U.S. assets in 2026. So yeah, they're interested in lunar resources, ISRU, and they have some kind of partnership with Astroport. So we'll see what happens with that. They're working on tech demonstrators and so on. So it's very interesting. So I think, okay, let me bring up comments. So I'll just make them full screen so it's easier to read. So Calvin Masters 6159 said, Regolith wreaks havoc with spacesuits and equipment. It's like ground glass. It'd be beneficial of it if it could be transformed onto a construction material like concrete. Yeah, well, that's the plan from Astroport. And NASA's involved as well, providing grants, because NASA's well aware of how dangerous regolith is. It is like ground glass. It's very sharp. It can be very small, so you can even breathe it in. If it gets onto your spacesuit, you take it to a habitat, you can breathe it in. So it's dangerous. It's also electrostatic, which means it clings to equipment, and it can be very hard to get rid of it. So that's one of the problems Astroport has, is that dealing with the electrostatic regolith. So they're working on some technology to do that. NASA is also actually on Blue Ghost. They demonstrated some equipment that can. I'll bring myself up here now. They demonstrated some equipment that can clear the regolith. Some like electromagnetic technology can like get rid of the regolith. The Apollo astronauts just used brushes, which is like pretty basic to get rid of the regolith. But yeah, you have to deal with it because it is very dangerous. So the second comment was, I just picked some comments. These aren't all the comments. Andy Kaufman ML30G said, OG said, I love these ideas, but they're a little far-fetched, especially on these timelines. SpaceX doesn't even have a Starship at all, let alone a lunar variant. No one has successfully landed anything on the moon's south pole yet, but this company is talking about landing a bunch of automated robots there and doing all of this, ? Color me skeptical. If landing on the moon takes a million things to go right and any one of them failing brings it all down, this would require billions of things. Yeah, it's their plan is complicated. It involves a lot of autonomous robots all working together in a swarm, and like the brick making has to work before you can move the bricks to the landing pad, and then they all have to be placed in the correct position using multiple robots. It's quite involved. So I think this will build up over time. They do have an experiment on Mission 1, the Astrobotic? No, it's not Astrobotic. It's the Flex rover, basically. There's a Mission 1, which is a private commercial Starship mission to the moon. And the Flex rover will be on board, and it will be deploying a number of payloads, one of which is from Astropath. And it's going to deploy the technology to do the sieving of the regolith. So they're doing step by step. They're de-risking the technology, and then they can move on to the autonomous rovers, including, I believe, they're going to use the Flex rover. If you look at some of the if you look at this particular image, you can see that is really a Flex rover. If you look at the shape, that looks to me like it's a Flex rover, and they've added some equipment on the front. And some of the other images, it seems to me they're using 4-point autonomous machines and the Flex rover, a lunar rover. So they're not starting from zero. They're using other companies' rovers, which will be modified, obviously, and they're adding their own technology. So it could take 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, who knows? And there's another comment from Gaius Enceladus. Landing launch pads are definitely needed. Only one thing to look at, IAM's problems with landing tipping over to see that. A nice, smooth, flat and dust-free landing and launching site will be invaluable to companies looking to push the lunar economy forward. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a business. You can, I'm not sure how the funding works, but maybe you have to pay to use the landing pad, the launch pad and the landing pad. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a business there, not just on Moon, but on the Mars as well. Yeah, you need landing pads to avoid problems with, first of all, you don't want pebbles or rocks going into the engine bay. That could be an issue when you're taking off. Yeah, so I think, you know, we use them on Earth. We use landing pads and so on, launch pads. So I think it'll be the same on Moon and Mars. It's obviously technically very difficult to do, but I think it's absolutely needed. So that is the second video I worked on this week. And then yesterday, I worked on Space News. So let's see if I have a slide for Space News. Yes, here it is. Bring it up. There it is, Space News. So I covered 3 stories this week. So on, where did I start? I started with Vast Space. So I think I have a video for them. Let's see if we can add this video, where it is now. Yeah, I'll add this one here. So Vast Space is working on Haven 1, which is their very first commercial space station. It's a single module. It's basically they want to have NASA fund their commercial space station, which will be Haven 2, which is a bigger space station. Haven 1 is just the minimal viable product for a commercial space station. Single module, and it was going to launch later this year, I think in August, and now it's been pushed back to, I think, maybe May 2026. So they've been working on getting payload partners. You can see that there's a wall where the payloads go. There's 10 slots called mid-deck locker equivalent payload slots. So it's equivalent to what you'd have on the ISS, the same size. You can have a 30 kilo payload. Each payload will receive 100 watts of electrical power and Ethernet connectivity. So, you know, you've got access to the internet, you can send commands, you can get back information and so on. And you've got 30 kilos of payload. So there's 10 of those, and they now have 5 payload partners. So like 50% capacity for payload. Originally, and this was announced a year or 2 back, they got Yuri and Redwire. They're the original payload partners, and they've had payloads on the International Space Station, so they're quite well known. And now they've had 3 new partners: JAMSS, which is a Japanese company, Exobiosphere and Interstellar Lab. So they're working on like crystal growth, pharmaceuticals, plant growth, and drug screening payloads. So yeah, there's 5 slots free. So maybe in the future we'll get more announcements. That's one video. Let's see if we got any more videos. See if we can bring up this video here. Yeah. Okay, Haven 1 development. So yeah, there's 5 more payload slots. Oh, I've just played that one, I think. So I'll bring this one up here. So yeah, there's 5 more payload slots. Oh, this is the VAST mock-up. So it's basically on a trailer. They were at the International Space Symposium, and they have this little mock-up that you can go inside and have a look. So yeah, there's a nice dome. You can look outside, and it's showing you around the mock-up. So you've got the berthing area. So this is where you sleep. There's 4 places there, and that's where you dock to the SpaceX Dragon. There's a hatch there. Yeah, there's some kind of information panel there you can look at. And yeah, there's cargo storage, and yeah, there's food, consumables, and crew quarters. There's 4 of those, so up to 4 crew sleep there. And then you've got this common area, and then you've got this is where the payloads would be, in this area here. You can open them up, and yeah, you can see some of the experiments there, and in total there's 10. So you can see some of them already there, and at the top you've got a dome window, nice big window, so you can look at Earth from there, which is yeah. So that is Haven 1, which is launching hopefully next year. I think it's May 2026 on a SpaceX Falcon 9. And then there will be a crew mission to the Haven 1. I think I don't know if it's 2 or 4 crew. It's probably 4 crew, right? And they'll spend 2 weeks on Haven 1. And if you look at the Haven 1 user manual, they apparently have missions every 3 months, which lasts 2 weeks. So I don't know if that's planned, or that's what they can support. I only know of 1 mission to Haven 1, which is the first mission. And VAST are also doing missions, private astronaut missions to the International Space Station. So similar to Axiom Space. And my speculation on that is that's because they need to get the relationships with NASA. They have to do the astronaut training. So they have to know how to do all that. So they're building up the relationships, just like Axiom Space has done with NASA. And that will mean more people at NASA will be aware of our VAST space, worked with them, will have a working relationship, and that will more likely get them to get that CLD Phase 2 award, which is Commercial LEO Destinations Phase 2 award. Phase 1's already been awarded. So you've got Starlab, you've got Orbital Reef, you've got Axiom Space getting grants, but the Phase 2 is a critical award for all the commercial space station operators, VAST Space, Starlab, Orbital Reef, Axiom Space. They have to win that, otherwise I don't think they will be commercially viable. So that award is coming up in 2026, I think. Maybe this year, maybe next year. And so Haven 1 kind of gets them known by NASA, and it's a minimal viable product. And then Haven 2, which is twice the size, it's 2 modules, 2 docking ports, more science they can do, and that's the one they're going to propose to NASA for the award. So yeah, that's the plan. Haven 1's entirely privately financed by the CEO. Haven 2 will be financed by NASA, they hope. So what else can I cover? Oh yes, so let's talk about, I can bring this up, other space news. So these are some stories that I didn't get around to cover, or maybe I'll do that as a separate video at some point. So iSpace is currently heading towards the moon. It launched in January of this year. It's taking a very slow route. It's going all the way around the moon, out into deep space, and then it's circling around, and I think it's going to spin around the Earth before matching up with the lunar orbit. So it's going to land in June, beginning of June, so maybe 6 weeks or something like that. And iSpace was in the tier list video I did because they're very interested in lunar ISRU, lunar regolith, and so on. So yeah, so that's some space news I didn't cover. And Zeno are working on power. They do radioisotopes. So basically, it's radioactive material that decays, releases heat, which can be used to warm up things. In this case, the iSpace lunar lander will be kept warm over the lunar night, which lasts for 2 weeks. Most lunar rovers just die when the sun sets. The solar panels don't collect any heat. They don't. So all the systems just shut down. So iSpace is working to have a lunar rover that works over the lunar night, and they've teamed up with Zeno that will add their radioisotope batteries to keep the lunar rover warm. That's the plan anyway. And what else? I just removed myself here. So iSpace is a space tug company, and they're working on quite a powerful space tug. It can move satellites from low Earth orbit to geosynchronous orbit in about 8 hours. It's very, very powerful, but it's one tug per mission. It's not a reusable space tug. But yeah, so that's Impulse Space. I've not done a video on them yet. Maybe I will in the future. And they're preparing their Helios space tug for assembling it at the moment. And then also IM4. So Intuitive Missions has done 2 missions to the moon so far. IM1, IM2, both which tipped over. So IM3 has been contracted, and now IM4 is also contracted by NASA. So and that will be launching 2 data relay satellites that will help with communications. So if you're doing any missions to the lunar dark side of the moon, you don't have any communication with Earth unless you're using lunar data relay satellites. So by launching those, putting them into orbit, they'll be able to communicate with scientific equipment, rovers, landers that are on the dark side of the moon. So yeah, that's IM Intuitive Machines with the 4th mission for NASA. So okay, I think that is everything that I'm covering this week. In terms of next week, what I'm going to cover, I know that I have to cover InnoSpace. InnoSpace is a South Korean space startup. I've covered them in space news a few times, but they're getting quite close now to launching their first orbital rocket. They've launched a suborbital rocket called Hanbit TLV. Their orbital rocket is called Hanbit Nano, and the Erector has been shipped to Brazil, the Alcantara launch spaceport in Brazil. That's where they're going to be launching from. The transport Erector has been packaged and sent to Brazil. So I think they're launching in summer sometime. So before they launch, I want to do a video on them just to cover them so everyone's aware of the company. And it could be the very first South Korean. It could be the very first. Yes. Thanks for joining the chat. It could be the very first South Korean and very first Asian startup to get to orbit. There's been a few Japanese attempts. Space One has attempted twice and not quite managed. And Interstellar Space is also a Japanese space startup. They've launched some suborbital rockets, sounding rockets, quite a few of them, I think 7. But they're working on a orbital rocket. So they're a contender, but it looks like InnoSpace is the most advanced Asian space startup, and they're doing an orbital launch attempt in the summer. So we'll see how that goes. So that's one of the videos I want to do. And I'm not sure at the moment of any other. So this comment here, this is Gyro King, I'm hoping it's Skyroot Aerospace. Yes, I covered Skyroot Aerospace, done a video on them. Yeah, I mean, thanks for that, because I didn't mention them. I don't know how far they are towards launching. I know they've launched a suborbital rocket, the what's it called, the Skyroot, no, Vikram S, I think it was, S for suborbital, and then they got Vikram 1, 2, and 3, whole family of rockets. But yeah, they'll be launching at some point. I don't know how far they are to getting ready to launch, but I think Innospace is probably going to be the first Asian startup, so I'm going to cover that. And yeah, I don't know what else I'm covering next week. We'll see. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. And yeah, I'll be doing these space news live streams every week at the same time. So either Saturday evening, Sunday morning, and yeah, I normally do 2 videos a week as well. So thank you for joining, and see you next week.